we're going to get into winners and losers of today. The loser was my office and my work, because I got no work done today. Just going through what was going on through UCLA and USC, NBA free agency, just a wild day in sports history as a whole. I'm going to start with you, Madman. What are your initial reactions to UCLA and USC joining the Big Ten? Something that I never thought would happen. It's a more of a national footprint for UCLA and USC at this point. A lot more money on the table. But what was your first reaction to UCLA and USC joining the conference?
Thriller. I mean, to be honest with you, it was surreal. You had to sort of look at the text to say, am I really reading this correctly? Am I like hallucinating? I mean, what are these really? It's like Chandler in Friends when he had that line. He's like, "Are you really saying these words?" I mean, that's really what it felt like. It's an incredible day, no question about it. And it sort of speaks to how well these two institutions can kind of collaborate with one another, collaborate in private, in confidentiality and secret, because I think they were much further along, in terms of a deal than when it sort of got first reported to the media. I think this, obviously this was a meeting that I think was ready to be had, and the unanimous vote was to be done. And so, on the one hand, I'm very excited. I'm sure we'll get into it. I think that, economically, it's huge for both schools. I think it puts them on the map here with the Big Ten media rights deal. A little bit sad, given the nostalgia and the history of the PAC-8 and then the PAC-10 and the PAC-12. And who would have thought that USC and UCLA would be competing for the Rose Bowl for the Big Ten spot in the Rose Bowl as it stands right now. So just a wild day overall, but seismic.
That is something I'm very, sad about, is I do think the Rose Bowl is now tainted forever, because this is just the tip of the iceberg. Oregon has too much money with Nike on the line to stay in a PAC conference that is without their two of their three big top dogs, right? They're going to be the next team following in line, probably heading to the Big Ten or wherever that may be. And then you got teams like Stanford, that are institutions that any conference would welcome. Do they stay in the PAC? I don't know, tip of the iceberg. But for me, when I heard the news, I just don't believe there can be a Rose Bowl that is the same as the PAC-12 going against the Big Ten. And that's a sad thing for me. That is a loss, because the Rose Bowl growing up, I think it's one of the best traditions we have, not only in college sports, but sports alone. It's going to feel a little tainted there. And that does hurt a little bit to see the Rose Bowl go.
My initial reaction was, holy crap, we cannot, okay, how do I say this correctly? Because obviously we loved it, but we cannot get a break, as in LA football. There is always something going on. There is no offseason, whether it's the Rams, the Chargers, and now the Trojans and Bruins. It's like the work never stops. That was my first thought, like, well, here we go. Another crazy day. Let's get into it. Let's dive in and have some fun. But no, when I first heard it, Will, I was intrigued. Again, I was like, wow, this is like a really big deal to just like pop up at 9 a.m. on a Thursday. But then it started really getting legs, and whenever there's smoke, there's usually fire, right? So at first I was like, all right, I'm intrigued, but I don't really believe it. And then when I started saying like, okay, this can happen, I wrapped my head around like, do I like it? Do I not like it? And I totally agree with everything you both said about the history, and that's so sad to see. But overall, I am through the moon for the move overall, just because I think for the brand of UCLA, the brand of USC, this is so huge for them. And obviously we're talking mainly football, but I think basketball also. The real question will be the other non-profitable sports, but we'll get into that some other day, and obviously not on this show necessarily. But I think overall this is such a huge move, because when you look at the brand of the Big Ten, the B1G, right, that it is now, and I think it's just a great brand for football. Obviously, the money, I mean, we can talk about that, but, each team getting $100 million in media money right off the bat from this. So that's just going to be crazy for NIL deals. And me and Jamal have talked about like what kind of money Pac-12 teams actually have versus SEC teams. Well, now UCLA and USC can more so compete with that kind of NIL money. They already have the LA recruiting prowess. Now they add that to the resume. So we'll get into it. I don't want to take too much time on this beginning part, but I was very honestly happy about it. The more and more I think about it, the more and more happy I am about it. And I'll just say it with this. So I have something at home called the Infinity Bottle. And what this is I've mixed 18 different whiskeys in one bottle. It's a specialty that only comes out on special occasions, and I poured myself a glass for this episode of the Bruin Bible. So that's how I'm feeling right now.
I'm on the same wavelength. I think the first second I heard it was so foreign and so different that I did call it trash. I was not a fan. I did not like it. It feels foreign. You know, UCLA, USC, they're West Coast teams. Them playing in the heart of the Midwest, that doesn't feel right to me. That is just something, as someone that's grown up on the West Coast, that has grown up going to these football games, whether it be when I was a student at Arizona State, when I lived up in the Bay Area at Cal, you know, whether we tailgated outside the USC UCLA game last year. These are what I'm used to, West Coast teams making them play. But the more that I thought about it, just from a competition standpoint, how exciting this is for UCLA. I saw a stat that annually, the Ohio States and Michigan, which are the class of the Big Ten, you know, before UCLA and USC can go in there, they were making $20 million more annually than UCLA and USC due to the media rights deals and things like that, which allowed them to do bigger NIL deals, which is now a new part of it. And the big statement that really stood out to me today was actually not from a UCLA person, but it was from Mike Bond, the athletic director of USC. And just to quote him very quickly, he said, "This is the most volatile and uncertain era in the history of American collegiate athletics. USC must ensure it is best positioned and prepared for whatever happens next. It is our responsibility to always evaluate potential opportunities and be willing to make changes when needed." Just the word choice there, volatile, you know, uncertain era of college sports. It shows that USC was ready to move on.